This company will never be yours, Lisa. Joseph set his pen down, his eyes cold as steel. I looked straight at my father, my voice steady. I am capable and I deserve it. Paul leaned against the doorframe, a careless smile on his face as if nothing had ever concerned me. My mother Ruth whispered soft warnings beside us, her fingers tapping lightly on the vase. I turned and walked out of the office, my steps echoing across the marble floor. 3 months later in the courtroom, their arrogance collapsed completely. My father lowered his head in silence and Paul was flushed with embarrassment. I held the victory documents, a cold gleam passing through my eyes as I looked at their helpless state. I grew up on the Gold Coast under the heavy shadow of my father. Paul was always favored while my efforts were brushed aside. I graduated from Yale Law School with honors, captain of the debate team, editor of the Law Review, yet none of it earned my father's approval. My father spoke in an icy tone. Marriage and family are the path you should follow. The office was stacked with documents, phones ringing non-stop. Every success felt like slamming against a glass ceiling, reminding me that this world was never meant for me. My mother, gentle yet withdrawn, whispered, "It is safer to follow your father's wishes." I gritted my teeth and vowed silently I will not be silent like her. My first independent job began at Carter & Associates, where they valued ability and nothing else. Mark Carter pointed at the file. "This is your chance, Lisa." I took the file knowing this was a battlefield, not a simple job. Every contract, every argument, I gave everything I had. Nights in my small apartment I worked under the lamp, loneliness beside me, but victory washed away fatigue. My name spread among colleagues as a symbol of reliability and professionalism. Every win in court was a silent rebuttal to my father's prejudice. Past humiliation, his distrust, Paul's contempt, all turned into fuel. As I reviewed documents, I checked every clause, ensuring no loophole remained. The phone rang. I answered, clearly explaining case progress. In the conference room, I discussed strategy with colleagues, my logic precise. Paul occasionally mocked, "You are too tense." I replied calmly, "Only being serious wins." Each time I organized files, I highlighted key evidence to ensure success in court. Mark reminded me, "Tomorrow is the hearing, know every detail." I nodded, organizing each file, memorizing every page. Clients visited and I explained strategy point by point, making sure they understood the process. When colleagues raised questions, I laid out the flaws and solutions clearly. Every night I reviewed documents, marking every crucial piece of evidence. Before each hearing I practiced every line, ensuring clarity. Paul mocked again, "You take this too seriously." I replied calmly, "Only being serious wins." My father called asking about my progress. I answered briefly, "Everything is on track." Mark assigned me a major client, contracts hundreds of pages, and I analyzed them one by one. At meetings I answered clearly and colleagues began to listen seriously. Clients were satisfied, I was praised, but the real test was still the courtroom. Each morning I organized case files, made copies, and confirmed witness schedules. Folders were neatly arranged, each document well structured. Before every hearing I used a stopwatch to practice ensuring precision. Facing my first major case, I checked every piece of evidence carefully. Mark stood beside me, "This case matters, are you ready?" I nodded, verifying every source. Clients visited and I laid out strategy step by step. Colleagues asked questions and I explained the evidence chain in detail. Each night I reviewed documents under the lamp, marking every key point. Before the hearing I practiced repeatedly, ensuring clarity. Paul mocked beside me, "You are too tense, I never behave like this." I replied calmly, "This is my work, not your performance." Mark assigned me a complex client, contracts hundreds of pages, and I analyzed each one. At meetings my answers were logical and colleagues began to respect my input. Clients were pleased, I was praised, but the real battle was in court. Each morning I organized case files, copies, and witness confirmations. Court folders were neatly arranged, every document in order. Colleagues sent me documents and I checked every page, marking potential issues. Before each hearing I used a stopwatch to rehearse, ensuring accuracy. Clients called for updates and I explained everything patiently and professionally. My father sometimes called asking if I was tired. I replied calmly, no, everything is on track. Paul sneered, you are too serious. I answered quietly, only being serious wins. Mark reminded me in the office tomorrow is the hearing, no, every piece of evidence. I nodded, reorganizing each file, memorizing every line. Every successful cross-examination strengthened my confidence. In court, Paul was visibly nervous, making frequent mistakes, and I pointed them out one by one. My father looked tense, his brow locked, unable to interfere. Every action in court felt like a strike of revenge. My clear statements overwhelmed the opposing side, every evidence point unshakable. Paul's voice grew frantic, repeating errors. My father muttered under his breath, powerless to intervene. Every piece of evidence, every question hit their weaknesses precisely. Outside court, Mark said, you have surpassed them. I smiled, knowing this victory was not only over the case but over the prejudice of my family. After organizing files, I checked the evidence order again, ensuring everything was ready. The phone rang, a worried client asking questions, and I explained the plan clearly, earning trust. Colleagues were surprised by my efficiency, saying, you always catch what others miss. I nodded lightly, no clue can be ignored. Before every hearing, I controlled the timing strictly, keeping my statements precise. Paul flipped through papers beside me, growing more anxious. My father frowned, gripping his pen, his hand trembling slightly. I continued organizing evidence, preparing it for court. Mark nodded, tomorrow they will know your strength. I answered quietly, I know. Mark handed me the case, this one is against Perez Legal Group, it is yours. I took the file, I understand. Facing my father and Paul did not shake me. Before the hearing, I organized every page, marking key points. On the day of the trial, I walked into the courtroom, my briefcase held tightly, my steps firm. Joseph sat opposite me, serious surprise flickering in his eyes. Paul let out a light laugh, but tension clung to him. I spoke with calm authority, the court will allow our opening statement. Page by page, I presented each document, clearly stating its source and validity. Paul made mistakes, and I corrected him instantly, stating the opposing statement is incorrect, refer to this page. The judge nodded, my logic clear, my tone steady. My father tried to interrupt, but I signaled to continue, and he could not stop me. During cross-examination, every question I asked pressed them with direct evidence. Paul flushed, unable to respond effectively. My father clenched his hands, breathing heavier, his eyes filled with frustration. Every piece of evidence was revenge against injustice. During the break, Paul whispered, you are too strong, I cannot fight you. I returned to my seat, calm, preparing the next round. Every document, every witness statement I presented hit the weaknesses directly. In the end, Perez Legal Group offered settlement terms fully in favor of our client. The hearing ended, my father silent, Paul staring at the floor. The client shook my hand with gratitude while my father offered no reaction. Mark patted my shoulder, you were perfect. I nodded, knowing this was a victory not only over the case but over the patriarchy and bias I had lived under. Days later, my father appeared in my office, Lisa, I see your ability. I leaned back, asking, and now return to the family firm. He sighed, you deserve to take over, Paul will have another position. I answered after a long silence, I need time. He nodded and left, and I looked toward the Chicago skyline. Freedom and victory intertwined, and I knew that whatever path I chose, I was my own master. Victory, dignity, and ability shaped every firm step I took. In the courtroom, the office, the apartment, every triumph stood as a testament to my revenge.